Welcome back to Yoshi Entertainment, everybody. So this is a different kind of video that's going to take a different direction, but I wanted to see where people's thoughts were at. I was on Twitter and I saw this come up on the Twitter timeline. Now, if you don't read the Bible or if you don't believe in the Bible, then this is probably not the video for you, but I encourage you still to change that. But anyways, so the subject came up on Twitter, the subject of Bathsheba and David. Was she technically assaulted, in the situation, or was she willing and did she, go along with it? You know what I'm saying? And some people brought up some interesting and quite mind-boggling points. Now, I contemplated putting up, pictures of the scriptures, but I'm going to encourage you yourself to go to 2 Samuel 11. That's where this occurs in the Bible. And in that particular passage, it does talk about how she was bathing. I think it was late at night, if I'm not mistaken. And he had decided for some reason to get up and walk along the rooftop of his palace. Now, why he was walking along the rooftop of his palace, I don't know. Some people say that it was a spur of the moment type of a thing that he just decided to do randomly. So one could say he was in no place that he should have been at that time. He also happened to see her, Bathsheba, bathing from inside of her house, so to speak. So if you're on the rooftop of a palace, you have one heck of a bird's eye view of what's going on from above looking down. So you can see everything, including, like I said, into somebody's house. So it's not her fault that she just so happened to be bathing. And some people, I guess, were trying to imply that she intentionally tried to seduce him. But how would she have known that he was walking on his rooftop? Literally the rooftop of his palace at that time. If she decided she wanted to take a bath at that time in her own house, what's wrong with that? So like I said, I think this is a case more of him being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But anyways, he happened to see her bathing, and then he literally sent his messengers to find out who she was. And make no mistake, he knew she was married because they told him this. And he still sent for her to come to him so that they could sleep together. Now, that's about the extent of what it says. But just like we do breakdowns of all these other books in parts of history, you have to do breakdowns and historical research on the Bible. Why wouldn't you? To get a better understanding of what was going on and what was going on from their perspective during that time period. Now, like I said, he was on the rooftop staring down. One can say he was being a peeping Tom. But we're going to move on from that. Some of us have gotten beside ourselves during this time period, and we don't realize how good we really have it in some aspects of life, how blessed we really are. Back in that day, things were so much different, especially for women. Okay, remember, this was during a time where, wasn't a whole lot of women working and holding titles and having property and whatnot, unless I guess she was like a widow or she didn't have like any brothers or a father. But women weren't allowed to do much. Okay. And so, as you can see from this article that I've posted and in the biblical text, she was married. And David knew this because whenever they brought her to him, mind you, it says that they brought her to him, not that she went to him. He saw her and then told his servants and his messengers to go get her and bring her to him. So back in that time, this was the king we were talking about. This was back in the time when, if you remember from the story with Abraham, how he was like, "Oh, I was so afraid that if I didn't say that Sarah was my sister, that the king was gonna kill me and like take my wife." That's the kind of stuff that they were on back in the day. Kings would call people over there, or people would be visiting from other places. These men, because they were kings, remember, they felt like they could have everything and everybody that they wanted. Most of them. They saw a woman and she was beautiful. A lot of them would be like, "I want her." And nothing would stop him from getting her unless she ran. And even still, like, that didn't stop some of these men. Because some of these men, they did not take no for an answer. So some of these men would be like, "I want her." And he would get his men, his guards, to bring her to him. And then he would express that he wanted to sleep with her. And she would probably say something along the lines of, "I mean, you're the king and I'm flattered. I'm touched that you want to sleep with me," or whatever, I guess. But I'm married. I can't sleep with you. Like, even if she wanted to sleep with him, Like women back in the day, most of them had, self-respect and morals. I'm not going to jump in bed with you because you're rich, because you have a lot of money, because you're royal. I have a husband and I'm going to adhere to those vows, especially if these men were idolaters and they worshiped other idol gods and they didn't have the same God or worship the same God that she did. That's a big no-no. You know what I'm saying? She would try to deny him in the most respectful way that she could without bruising his ego or being disrespectful. Because, like I said, back in the day, these kings were on something different. Okay. She would say, I can't do that because I'm married. And he would say, oh, is that your husband over there? Oh, yeah, that's my husband. Okay. And then he would send his guards to take care of that problem real fast. And then he would be like, okay, so what's your excuse now? You're a single lady now. I mean, you're a widow, but you're a single lady now. So what's stopping you? And that was only just because back in that day, like I said, marriage was held to a much higher standard. And as messed up as some of these kings were, they were like, I ain't trying to really commit no adultery, most of them. But I know how to fix that real fast, though, and that's what they did. Like I'm telling y'all, these kings were on something different back then. And that's what a lot of them did to get these women. And some of them, they were so bad, they didn't care if you had a husband. They didn't care if you were married. They didn't care if you said no. They didn't care if you didn't want to do it. You were going to do it with them. Now, there was a tweet that did express, okay, well, back in the day, the Bible, well, not back in the day, but the Bible does, usually make it pretty clear when the instance is, blatant assault, but they didn't quite make it that way in this situation. And to that, still, I'm going to respond to this. They were pretty, I won't say that it was as horrible as it could have been, but if you read between the lines, like I said, do historical research, you can understand that this was not a situation where Bathsheba wanted to jump in bed with David, okay? Like some people were saying, I feel like they'll look at some of the women of today and be like, oh, he was rich, he was the king, why wouldn't she want to jump in bed with him? But again, she was married. I keep telling y'all, these kings were on something different back in the day. And it's not like she could say no to him. He was the king. You couldn't just say no to the king. And people love to make it so black and white. Well, she should have said no. Or she should have done this. But even if she had said no, what made y'all think that was going to stop David? What made y'all think? What makes y'all think women saying no is going to stop somebody who's intent on taking anything by force? That's why I hate it when people make it so black and white and they say, well, the woman should have did this, because low key, that's like victim blaming. You know what I'm saying? Like she could have said no, but she couldn't. Like you gotta understand the power imbalance between her and the literal king of the land. Wasn't nobody about to say no to him. Nobody. He had the power to make sure it stayed that way. And in the article that I posted, and I'll leave a link in the description box if you want to read it for yourself, it talked about how in the Bible it said that it didn't say they laid with each other. It said he lay with her. So it wasn't this whole like, oh yeah, I wanted to go do it with him as much as he wanted to do it with me. It was a very one-sided, like, I want this from you because I lusted after you after I was watching you in a moment where I should have been keeping my eyes to myself. It was a sin that he committed against her. But we have, for some reason, especially in the Black community, have taught this entire passage as if this was, like I said, like a lot of people love to say, it takes two to tango, and that's true. But we need to tell the truth and shame the devil. This was a very one-sided, very lacking in consent situation. Again, I've already expressed that there was no way she could have said no to him back in that day. And even after what had happened, people were saying, oh, well, they conspired to get rid of her husband. No, David conspired to get rid of her husband because she contacted him and let him know, dude, you got me pregnant. Which, what else was she supposed to do? What else was she supposed to do after the dude who was the king, who she could not say no to? You can say, oh, well, maybe she was willing. You don't know that. And whether she was willing or not, that doesn't excuse the lack of consent. But anyways, after he got her pregnant, what else was she supposed to do? Answer me that. She let him know, dude, you got me pregnant. So what are we going to do now? He was the one who came up with that idea that did not work. So then he sent him to the front lines, her husband, to get offed in battle so that he wouldn't be looked at as the adulterous king. And it even says in the Bible that she wept over Uriah. So I don't understand how people can say again that, this was a two-way street, that she wanted him gone so badly that she wanted to be with David, that it was just as much her as him, when she wept over her husband being gone. And a lot of people also say, oh, well, she still married him. Again, what else was she supposed to do? Once she had started to show, people were going to know, well, hey, wait a minute, Uriah hadn't been here in a hot minute, because he said that if these men couldn't come and stay with their wives, he wasn't going to do that either, because he was a good man, he was a good leader. So how she come up pregnant? Who she been sleeping with? Because it wasn't him. And, back in the day, they were real quick to stone women for stuff like adultery, getting pregnant out of wedlock, and, sleeping around. They were quick to stone the women now. Not the men necessarily, but the women. So what else was she supposed to do? So quite frankly, all she could do was go to him and be like, well, since he's no longer here, like, I'm still pregnant, ain't got nobody to take care of me. Like, it was his responsibility anyways, after getting her pregnant, to take care of her. If we want to be for real, y'all, we want to be for real. So again, what else was she supposed to do? Like, I feel like sometimes people, they don't really care about people going through these kind of situations. They just want people to just shut up and get stoned, or just take the L. You know what I'm saying? And I'm glad that people are having these conversations, because if you do say that it was consensual and that she wasn't technically assaulted or at least coerced, then you are part of the problem, the growing problem in the community that is allowing men to walk around and not address the problems of lust and perversion that they have, that are driving them to make decisions and say things, commit atrocities against women that women get blamed for. And then we want to wonder why and be upset people don't want to come to church, especially women, because they don't want to be around a bunch of people, both men and women, who think it's okay to do this kind of stuff and not call it out and condemn it. It's already bad when your church is being led by a man who thinks that it is okay for a man to say, well, she finally gave me her consent, not caring if she actually wanted to do it with the guy or not, but because she simply gave him the, oh my God, yes, finally, okay, yes, because he wouldn't leave her alone, or because he was holding something against her, that makes it okay or justifies the action, because it does not. And some of these same people, if it was their mother or their daughter that was in that situation, let your daughter's boss, that's old enough to be her father, come up to her and say, I will fire you today if you don't jump in bed with me tonight. And then she crumble and jump in bed with him. And then he say, oh, well, she gave me her consent. So trust me, you're going to be pissed at somebody. And the sad part is, there are some men, they have put their empathy so far in the trash that they wouldn't even care if it happened to their own mother or daughter. So saying, what if it happened to yours? That don't even work on some people, sadly. And it shouldn't even come to that. It shouldn't even come to you having to, think, oh, what if this happened to my daughter or my mother or something like that? That you finally, wake up and smell the coffee and understand. This is why, y'all, it is so important to read the Bible, do research, use wisdom and literacy. And I'm not just talking about people, I'm talking about for myself too. Because we don't realize how many times we have taken the context. We've taken the scriptures out of context completely. And there's not a lot of people who are man or woman enough to stand up and say, listen, I've said this about this scripture, or I use this scripture out of context for years. I used it wrong. I used it abusively. I abused people with it. I was wrong and repented and actually did the right thing, or just didn't do that to begin with. And what I mean by I didn't do that is didn't actually use the scripture out of context to begin with. But we got to start addressing this stuff and condemning these mindsets. Like I said, if you're one of those type of people who really thinks like that, you are contributing to the problem. You're not contributing to the solution. And it starts, like I said, with us reading the Bible, with us having an understanding, being smart, using wisdom, doing research, having biblical literacy and a sound mind. Please don't get on the internet, especially Twitter, and spew biblical illiteracy and stupidity, because that's what a lot of people out there are doing. And you have to have the wisdom to be able to sift through the hogwash and know what's right. But anyways, I get really, angry and passionate about these kind of subjects because I don't like people misusing and abusing scriptures and taking them out of context and then shoving them in people's faces. Like I said, there's a reason why people don't like reading the Bible. There's a reason why a lot of people don't like Christians and they don't want to go to church. Sometimes it's just the people at church doing the wrong thing. But anyways, y'all let me know what y'all think down in the comments below, respectfully.